Well, hello and welcome to the Lockhart Radio Podcast. I am your host, Felicia Lockhart, and we're looking today at four more House Democrats that are calling on Biden to step aside. Another group of House Democrats called on Biden to step aside today after John Tester of Montana became the second sitting senator to publicly urge Biden to reconsider his re-election bid. Quote, "We believe that the most responsible and patriotic thing that you can do in this moment is to step aside as our nominee while continuing to lead our party from the White House. Democrats have a deep and talented bench of younger leaders led by Vice President Kamala Harris, who you have lifted up, empowered, and prepared for this moment," wrote the Democratic Congressman Jared Huffman of California, Mark Veazey of Texas, Chuy Garcia of Illinois, Mark Pacone of Wisconsin. They all wrote in a letter addressed to the president. Though the congressmen do not explicitly endorse Harris, the letter strongly suggests that she should be at the top of the ticket. Emphasizing their great admiration and sincere respect for the president's decades of service, they write, quote, "Mr. President, you have always put our country and our values first. We call on you to do it once again, so that we can come together and save the country we love."
Hey, Sarah, there are a lot of moving pieces here to this Biden story. NBC News now reporting that members of the Biden family have been discussing what an exit from the campaign might look like. This is according to two people familiar with the discussions, saying that they're discussing an exit that would be on Biden's own timing and with a carefully calculated plan in place. They say they're weighing a few different considerations in making any plan, including the impact of the campaign on his health, his family, and the stability of the country. Now, this does not mean that any decision has been made for Biden to step aside. They're simply talking about a plan in case it's needed. But still, this is a major development from a president who has for weeks now been unwilling to consider any possibility of bowing out of this race, even as pressure for him to step aside has risen. Many Democrats, including some close allies, now believe Biden will be stepping aside, but in a signal of how in flux things remain, the Biden campaign was out with a memo just an hour ago saying that, quote, there was no plan in place for an alternative nominee. They were vowing that Biden was in it to win it and that he would become the official nominee in just a few weeks. So, guys, we'll continue to monitor this as it develops, but right now, increasing signs that the president himself could be seriously considering an exit here.
So he could seriously be considering an exit, but I do want to share with you this that came out this morning, which is July 19th, 2024, where his people are basically saying, no, that's not going to happen. So the president, Joe Biden's top campaign staffer, insisted on Friday that he would stay in the race, even as calls grew among his fellow Democrats in Congress for him to end his floundering re-election bid and to make way for a new candidate. More than 1 in 10 congressional Democrats have now publicly called on the 81-year-old incumbent who is currently isolating in Delaware because he has COVID. They're wanting him to drop out following a disastrous June debate against Republican Donald Trump that raised questions about Biden's ability to win or to carry out his duties for another 4 years. The divide among Democrats stood in sharp contrast to the scenes that played out this week at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, where former party rivals united around Trump, who accepted the Republican nomination in a rambling speech that featured his familiar mix of grievances and bombast. So far, 28 of the 264 Democrats in Congress have openly called for Biden to end his campaign, while other senior Democratic leaders have pushed him behind the scenes to do so, according to sources and media reports. Here's a quote from all of them. "We must face the reality that widespread public concerns about your age and fitness are jeopardizing what should be a winning campaign." This comes from Representatives Jared Huffman, Mark Veazey, Chuy Garcia, and Mark Pacone, who wrote in that letter that we just mentioned today, the 19th of July. Democratic U.S. Senator Martin Heinrich said on social media, "While the decisions to withdraw from the campaign is President Biden's alone, I believe it is in the best interest of our country for him to step aside, close quote. Democrats are increasingly worried about a Republican sweep in November, on the 5th of November's election, that could leave Trump and his allies not only in charge of the White House, but also with majorities in the both chambers of Congress. Biden had no public event scheduled for today, but a top advisor said that he would return to the campaign trail next week. Quote, he is absolutely in it. This comes from the Biden campaign's chairwoman, Jen O'Malley Dillon, and this is what she said to MSNBC in an interview. Former House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi is among those who have told Biden that he can't win in November, according to a White House source familiar with the matter. After weeks of insisting that he will remain in the race, Biden is now taking calls to step aside seriously, and multiple Democratic officials think an exit is a matter of time, sources said. Now, there was a Reuters poll earlier this week that found Biden and Trump were effectively tied. Strategists from both parties say Biden's path to victory is narrowing as he is in the most of these battleground states that will decide the election. Now, were Biden to step aside as the candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris, who is 59, could fill the role. Reuters polling shows as her performing marginally better against Trump in a theoretical head-to-head matchup. A Democratic Party committee was due to meet on Friday to discuss a virtual voting process to formally nominate their candidate ahead of the convention that is set to begin August 19th. Critics within the party have argued that it is a means to lock the embattled incumbent in early. Now, Trump tightens his grip on Republicans, with his grip on the Republican Party even tighter. Trump is in a much stronger position than his 2017-2021 term to follow through on his agenda if he wins the election. At the convention in Milwaukee, Trump did deliver a dramatic account of the attempt on his life by a gunman at a Pennsylvania rally last Saturday, and sought to appeal to undecided voters with a promise to be a president for all America, not half of America. Trump said, in an age when our politics too often divide us, now is the time to remember that we are all fellow citizens, close quote. But he quickly abandoned the message of unity he had promised in the wake of the shooting, pivoting to well-worn attacks on the Biden administration. He claimed that without evidence that his criminal indictments were a part of a Democratic conspiracy, predicted Biden would usher in World War III, described what he called an invasion of migrants over the southern border. Now, we're not going to read any more here because we don't want to make this about Trump. We do want to take a look specifically at what we started out with as it relates to Biden stepping aside. Now, in tandem with seeing that, there was this that came out just today, this morning. And I want to ask you guys specifically what you think about this. Was on Twitter. So we're going to click this.
Carl, according to multiple Democratic sources, this is happening all of a sudden. Everyone said it would happen gradually, and then it said,
we're going to start.
Carl, according to multiple Democratic sources, this is happening all of a sudden. Everyone said it would happen gradually and then all at once, and that's what's happening. According to my sources, President Biden has agreed to step down as the Democratic nominee.
Oh, man.
It will happen as early as this weekend. A speech has been drafted for him. He will continue on as president, is his intention. He also will not, I'm told, endorse Vice President Harris as his successor. They're hoping that he will endorse an open process in which the convention will be open to Vice President Harris and a few other candidates in Chicago to pick the Democratic nominee for president. The belief is that Vice President Harris is already looking at potential running mates to go to Chicago with a full ticket, including one possibility, Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, and perhaps the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro. Other possible candidates who are being talked about include Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, perhaps Gretchen Whitmer, and again, the vice president running. On the first ballot, the regular delegates would be allowed to vote under this agreement that's being talked about amongst the president and high-level Democratic officials. The regular delegates would vote on the first ballot. If there is no winner on the first ballot, the so-called super delegates would be allowed to vote on the subsequent ballot. This decision was reached, I'm told, all of a sudden because of the high-level pressure from Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and others, and as well as the decision of many of President Biden's top aides that there was no path forward for him, that he would not be able to win this election, win the general election. And therefore, he's stepping aside again as early as this weekend.
So, Mark, what are the political ramifications for a party that based much of their platform on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're passing right over Kamala Harris, and he's not going to be endorsing her, according to your sources?
Now, according to my sources, he will say very nice things about her. They do not want what some of my sources have been calling a Kamala coronation, that the problem in part that they found themselves in was that President Biden was not seriously challenged for the nomination. I'm told by some of her people, I don't know that the vice president thinks this, but some of her people believe she will win this, that she'll choose a strong running mate, that she does have the support of many of the delegates who are Biden-Harris delegates, and that she can win this basically on her own. And at least one of her allies said to me, this is better. Better to not be anointed by Joe Biden, better to show independence, better to show with a strong ticket the capacity to win the nomination on her own.
Well, Mark, that said, though, you're very familiar with campaign finance laws. He has, 200 and 300 million in his war chest right now. I believe, in my understanding, is Kamala would be the only one who could absorb that and continue on the campaign. How's that going to work when all their big pocket donors have already pushed for that?
Well, there's all sorts of money, right? There's super PAC money, there's low dollars. The belief is that a new ticket will inject excitement into the party, and that both low dollar donors and the big donors who in the last few days have sent a strong message to President Biden that they will not support his being the Democratic nominee. So there's a strong belief that with a new ticket that they can raise money from the big dollar donors who can give and bundle hard dollars, can give super PAC money, as well as the small dollar donations that will come in to whatever the new ticket is, whether it's the vice president or not. If it is the vice president, most campaign finance experts believe she does get to keep the Biden-Harris money.
So you see there, that comes from Newsmax. And according to this gentleman's sources, he has been told, according to his sources, that this will happen this weekend. So there's a lot going on, a lot shaking right now in the United States. One of the most important, I think, key takeaways from this is that, according to the sources that this man has quoted, it doesn't look as if the president will give her, and by her I do mean his vice president, the thumbs up, because according to what he just stated, it looks as if it would be better for her to just do it on her own and to gain the recognition that she needs, choose her own vice presidential candidate, and run from there. I need you guys to let me know what you think about this. Do you think that this is a possibility? I do understand that this particular network that we glean this information from has their independent sources. And let me know if what you think, based on some of the things that we've already seen here today within the last few minutes, is a clear indication that perhaps they are trying to formulate a way for him to gracefully step down or to move aside and allow them to choose their own candidate at this point. According to what we've seen, it does look like, if that's the case, that he will continue on as the president and still manage the country from the White House. But as far as the election is concerned, he will not be a party to that. Now, I know there has been a lot of speculation how this would work or how it would play out. None of us really know. And I think that it's important at this point in the game for everybody to stay as calm as possible and try to figure it out and decide exactly which direction they're going to go at the ballot box in November. Of course, I'm not going to endorse either candidate. I don't think that that would be responsible. But what I will say is it does take a lot of forethought, and it will take you having to decide exactly which direction you're going to go. Now, with that said, I know that there has been the elected, I know that President or former President Trump has decided who his running mate will be. I want to know down below in the comments, have you done any research on him? Have you looked at everybody? Have you weighed them all out? And if so, what is your take on this specific individual that he's chosen to run alongside him? And do you think that President or Vice President Kamala Harris will choose somebody that will be a shoe-in? I don't know how that would work for her if she were to choose Gavin Newsom. What do you think? Do you think that it'd be a good idea for her to choose Bashir? I don't know, but I do know they could also just choose somebody totally different. I hate to continue to reach back to The Simpsons. I will say that that man that created that show is hilarious, and that he's able to pinpoint some of the historic things and utilize those on that show. And I do remember seeing Lisa Simpson with the little pearls as the president after Trump or something like that was no longer the president. So just to add a little bit of humor there to that, this is a very serious time for our nation. I don't know or remember in our lifetime if we've seen this, unless, of course, some of us were around when they had the transfer from Nixon to, to all of that stuff. But in this particular case, it is quite unique in that we have a president who should have allowed them to utilize the 25th Amendment, which is something I think they could have exercised. But then I think it would have left that large gaping hole that they did not want to have. It does not look like he will stand in, I should say, support of Kamala Harris. Don't know what's going on with that as far as this man said, but tell me what you think down below in the comments. I want to tell you so much that I appreciate you all for tuning in today. Thank you very much. I will be back if anything happens. Okay. All right. For Headlines with a Voice, this has been the Lockhart News Brief. I've always been a unique person, you know what I mean? Sort of laid back in a way, but very adamant and very passionate about what I believe. I think a lot of times that sort of throws people off because they don't expect me to have the mindset or the process of thought that I do. And so when you come in to watch my channel, you may hear a myriad of thoughts and ideas that could be different from others. What I want you to do is just sit back, like, share, and subscribe. To receive instant notification each time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day.